Okay, this is If My People, Bible reading part 213. We are in the book of First Timothy, starting in chapter 3. For those of you who should be reading ahead, the next book is not Second Timothy. By the timeline and when the next one was written was actually Titus, the book of Titus. Second Timothy doesn't come along till later. He doesn't write one big long Torah letter and letter to his to the believers out there, and then write another one right after it. I know a lot of the Bibles have that in order and so forth, but that has nothing to do with what Yahweh wanted and how He wanted you to read it and when He wanted you to read it. So, following that, pay attention to what we're saying. We are in chapter 3 now, and more from Paul's on a roll here. And so everything that we're reading today is Torah, chapter 3. This is about elders, and we don't use the word elders very. There are some churches that have the word elders, and sometimes they have the word deacons. Deacons mean 10 people, decon, 10, and it means leaders of the church and so forth, whether they're paid or unpaid. What Paul's talking about is shepherds. Shepherds. So today, if you're to be a shepherd and you want to be a shepherd and you're no longer a sheep, this is what Paul says. Chapter 3, verse 2. Now the shepherd, the elder, must be above reproach, the husband of but one wife. Now there's that throw out the how in the world some churches, especially the Catholic churches, is they wanted the priest to be not married. Look what that has caused in the last 100 years that we know about. I would say it's been going on since the first pope. Wrong, and I shouldn't say that because the first bunch of popes were all married and also had multiple wives. Some did. Okay. Yeah, and they are the universal church, aren't they? We're supposed to follow after them, and the popes are seers. They speak directly of what God says. Oh man, you talk about. And by the way, they were generals and murderers many of the times to make sure they got in office. Not much difference between them and the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the Herodian government that came before them. The shepherd must be temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, and able to instruct, teach. Not given to drinking too much, not violent but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him with proper respect. That's a hard one these days. You can't even spank your kid for doing something horribly wrong. Don't touch him, you'll go to jail. He must not be a recent convert, has some age on him, wisdom. Before wisdom comes a ton of mistakes. Learning from mistakes is wisdom. Repeating your mistakes over and over again, expecting something different, that's insanity. Not conceited and fall under the same judgment as the accuser. He must also have good reputation with outsiders so that he will not fall into disgrace and into the accuser's traps. Deacons, sheep, and turning into shepherds, likewise, are to be men of worthy respect, sincere, not indulging in much wine, and not pursuing dishonest gain. They must keep hold of the deep truths of the faith with clear conscience. They must first be tested, and then if there's nothing against them, let them serve as deacons, leaders. In the same way, their wives are to be women worthy of respect, not malicious talkers, but gossipers, but temperate, trustworthy in everything. A deacon, a shepherd, must be the husband of but one wife and must manage his children and his household well. Now, so explain it the way Paul did. You can see what's going on. There's factions going on. People are saying this is what we are and this is what we are, and it's different. And Paul just kind of, he's always there in the middle trying to say, just pull it in together. Be of one faith, be of one mind, and in all things, love each other. Chapter 4, verse 7. Have nothing to do with wicked myths and old wives' tales. Rather, train yourself to be Elohimly. Verse 16. Watch your life and doctrines closely. Persevere in them, because if you do, you will save both yourself and your hearers. If they had watched them closely and all through the last 2,000 years since this was written, every church everywhere in the world would have the doctrines the same. Okay, chapter 5, and it's all Torah. Do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. Treat older men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters, with absolute purity. Give proper recognition to those widows who are really in need. This Torah is just fantastic, isn't it? Isn't this a lot easier to understand and follow than the Old Testament Torah? I've had to read that 20 times. The same thing. Still, it's arguable. In Messianics, who like to do Torah portions, they do the same thing every year on the same day, at the same reading, on the same Shabbat, and they do the same stuff year after year after year. So 50 years later, they're reading the same thing on the same day and the same portion, and they still argue. Does that tell you anything? Oh, goodness. But if a widow has children or grandchildren, these should learn first of all to put their aid into practice by caring for their own family and so repaying their parents and grandparents, for this is pleasing to Elohim. Well, there's a learning lesson right there. Verse 8, if anyone does not provide for his relatives and especially for his immediate family, he is denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Verse 9, no widow may be put on the list of widows unless she is over 60, has been faithful to her husband. In those days when Paul wrote that, that's pretty old. And if she had treated her husband, and of course he usually dies off, they married, for instance, a 30-year-old man could marry a 14-year-old girl. That was not uncommon. Even today, if you want someone that's a virgin, I mean a real one, you practically have to go back to the age of 14, because by then they're all, oh, well, I had to do this before 16. It's tradition. Okay, how'd that work out in the divorce among Christians? Not too good. Verse 10, and is well known for her good deeds, such as bringing up children, showing hospitality, washing the feet of the saints, helping those, in other words, it's caring for them, not you don't bring them in, give me your dirty feet. And devoting yourself to all kinds of good deeds, always into something, always wants to help out, do something. That's a hallmark of a good woman. Verse 14, so I counsel younger widows to marry, to have children, to manage their homes, and to give the enemy no opportunity for slander. If any woman, that's verse 16, who is a believer has widows in her family, she should help them and not let the assembly be burdened with them, so that the assembly can help those widows who are really in need. Like who really needs help, and who, well, let's just get a hold of the local church and they'll take care of it. We don't have to sit there and help mom, forget her. It's just the opposite what Yahweh just told you. When I say Paul, when I say Yeshua, I'm saying Yahweh. That is Torah too. As you can see, there is tons of Torah in the New Covenant. Why the churches don't recognize it, why Hebrew Roots doesn't recognize it. Even worse is Hebrew Roots. Of all people who sit there and look at the tiny things and get really detailed and know all the facts about everything, they're just so smart. They totally missing the picture. Totally missing the picture. They miss the biggest picture of all. The biggest mystery of all is that Yeshua can live inside of you, and you are the living temple, and there is no blood sacrifice. You don't have to chop your head off every time there's a holiday. The most obvious things are missed by the Christian Messianics and Hebrew Roots. Most obvious. And after years of me yeah, kick it. I decided to do all this. And then they say, well, you know what this is going to cost? You know what this is going to pay? Then you got to go online, sell yourself, and make sure you push the button, subscribe, and ring the bell, and make sure I need some money to do all this for. I'm not doing any of that. Not doing any of that. I'm deplorable. Chapter 5, verse 18. For the scripture says, do not muzzle the ox while it's treading out the grain. You remember that? Remember we told you that one? The worker deserves his wages. Do not entertain an accusation against an elder unless it is brought by 2 or more witnesses. Boy, could the courts learn that. And then, so-and-so did something sexual with me 29 years ago at a party in high school. And now I want revenge because he's going to be nominated for Supreme Court or something. Are you kidding me? If someone has committed a crime, you report it. You don't wait 25 years later and tell the police. And then they're looking for evidence. You go, well, you have to believe me because I'm a woman. Oh, you have to believe me because I'm a woman. Oh, once again, we are living in a whacked up, deplorable world. Okay. Those who sin, verse 20, are to be rebuked publicly so that others may take warning. I charge you in the sight of Yahweh, Messiah, Yeshua, and the elect messengers to keep these instructions without partiality and to do nothing out of favoritism, and do not be hasty on the laying on your hands, and do not share your sins of others. If you're laying hands on others, that means you're there. That's what it means. You don't have to go and lay hands on them. Literally, you can, and that's wonderful. But what it really means in the big circle there, it means be there for them. Don't sit there and Twitter feed them and YouTube and use the cell phone for all kinds of other purposes. Be there. Laying on of hands means be there. Chapter 6. All of you under the yoke of slavery should consider their masters worthy of full respect. That means today it's debt. Debt is slavery. Big time debt is slavery. Verse 2, those who have believing masters are not to show less respect to them because they are brothers. Instead, they are to serve them even better, because those who benefit from their service are believers and dear to them. These are the things you are to teach and to urge them. Verse 11, but if you, man of Elohim, flee from all this and pursue righteousness, Elohimness, faith, love, endurance, gentleness, fight the good fight of the faith. Take hold of the external life to which you were called when you made your good confession in the presence of many witnesses, in the sight of Yahweh, who gives life to everything, and of Messiah Yeshua, who while testifying before Pontius Pilate made the good confession. I charge you to keep this command without spot, without blame, until the appearing of our Master Yeshua Messiah. Verse 17, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in the wealth which is so uncertain these days. There's a good one. But to put their hope in Elohim, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Verse 19, in this way they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. Verse 20, not Torah, it's a closing salutation. Timothy, guard what has been entrusted to your care. Turn away from the wicked chatter and the opposing ideas of what is falsely called knowledge. These days it's called science. We're going to save the world, not with Jesus or God. That's a bunch of crap. It's all about science. And the aliens, aliens are going to save us. Yeah, I believe that there are aliens. Yeshua said he was. Yeshua said his believers were. And I believe that aliens are also demons. So who do you think is going to save the world on this earth without God or Jesus? Demons. The smart people out there are really smart, aren't they? Which some of you have professed so in doing have wandered from the faith. Grace be with you. That's the end of Paul's letter to Timothy. Blessings.